All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to see so many faces or names, I guess, up on the screen. We have a real treat today. This is the first part of our Camp ChatGPT series with Miss Rachel Riggs. And ChatGPT, if it's not something that you're familiar with yet, I don't know what rock you've been under, but it's definitely something that there's a lot of misconceptions about and more ways than you can imagine that you're able to incorporate it in your classroom. And I am just so excited to learn from Rachel Riggs for this session. She works with World Ed. And so she's a research person, professional development, digital learning, and all of that stuff. She does the ed tech sessions. And Rachel, weren't you a South Carolina teacher as well?
I worked briefly as the ESL curriculum specialist for South Carolina.
That's what I thought. I didn't want to say it wrong.
Yeah,
So she is definitely one of ours, and we're just so excited to have her here. I'll turn it over.
sure. I'm just popping in the chat. I'm starting us out with a poll. Want to hear from you guys on a few of these questions to get us started. So I put a link to the poll in the chat. You can also go to menti.com and manually enter this code 294489, or you can use your smartphone camera to scan the QR code and open up the poll on your phone. So welcome to Camp GPT. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm super glad to be here. We have run Camp GPT in a few different states now, but at World Education, we do have kind of a special relationship with South Carolina. So we're particularly excited to be joining you guys today. Everybody's getting in okay, I hope. Is the Mentimeter working for everyone? Good. Okay, I see a thumbs up. That's a good sign. Again, link is in the chat. I'll put it in again for those who just joined, or you've got the QR code, and you can also just go to menti.com. So welcome. Today's session will be pretty interactive, and we have an hour and a half together. So get comfortable, get your coffee, get your water, get whatever you need, and get ready to chat with your colleagues. There's more instructions for how to join. Okay, so first I want to know, what is your knowledge of generative artificial intelligence, or Gen AI? Have you heard of it? Could you define it? Could you name tools that leverage it? Have you used those tools before? And do you know strategies to use them really well? I think this is a multiple select if I set it up right. So I think maybe you can select multiple. If not, just select the one that is most closely resonates with where you are today. Sounds like a lot of people have heard of it. That's good. That's a great starting point, because we will define it. We will talk about tools that use it, and we will talk about strategies to use it well. So we will get you covered today, but it helps to know what everyone is coming here with. All right, so one person who has used it, one that can name some different tools that use it, and 4 that have heard of it. Oh, and 1 more can define it. Hey, look, as a team, we make a pretty good comprehensive knowledge around Gen AI. Awesome. Okay, next question is, if you could ask a robot, and this would be a robot in your imagination because robots can't do that much really today. But if you could ask a theoretical robot to do anything for you this week to make your job easier, what would it be? This is a fun question. Open-ended. Anything. Okay, you just use it a lot. Oh, that's great. Okay, a robot that could drive learners to class if they have some kind of barrier getting to class. That is awesome. Cook a balanced dinner with desserts. Love that. Read to class. Cut the grass. Answer my students' queries. Write a grant. That's funny. I kind of used a robot to help me write a grant recently. And hopefully we'll be able to see how we could do some of these things. Many robots can still not do though. Cook a balanced dinner, not really. Cut the grass, not yet. Um, well, unless you make a huge investment. But it's always fun to me to see what teachers say because I have noticed that the trend is to ask the robot to do a lot of things in our personal lives, like cleaning, cooking, taking care of the yard, and those kinds of tasks. All right, next question is, what do you want to learn? Why did you join Camp GPT? What are you hoping for? Be as specific as possible. Um, or maybe, you don't know what you don't know. So maybe you did just come just to make sense of things you've heard. That's fine too. But what are you hoping to learn in Camp GPT? Okay, prompting strategies, effective prompts. That's always a popular one. Okay, how to use it to do assignments in the university as a tool for ideas. So generating ideas sounds like that's great. How it's useful in the classroom. Great. Anything else? More about AI and how I can use it effectively. Okay, great. So what I'm hoping to offer, how to use it more. Great. So just how to use it, basically, it sounds like, and learning more. What I'm hoping to offer to you guys today, no, hold on, I'm in the wrong account. Get to my slides here. Is, I am going to talk a lot about kind of what is AI, what is generative AI. I'll introduce you to different tools. And then the true learning about how it can be applied is coming from other educators. So I have a resource I can share with you that will show you how other educators have used generative AI. And then we also will have an assignment between this session and the second session so that you can experiment and share with each other some of your ideas. Now, before I talk about how teachers can use technology, I really wanted to share with you guys this opportunity to hear from learners about how they have interacted with digital tools. Sorry, my screen is taking a minute to load. Hopefully, yeah, I think you're seeing that now. We have a publication at World Education. It's called The Change Agent. If you have heard of it or have submitted an article to the Change Agent, please let us know in the chat. It'd be great to hear. But our next issue of The Change Agent is a magazine that students can write for. So they can actually get their writing published at any level. If they're a beginner English language learner, they can write at their level and have their article published in the Change Agent. So the next issue is called Our Digital Future. So before we even begin to learn together about technology, about AI, I wanted to call out that we could also engage our learners in some of these same conversations and have them share their stories of what they think the future looks like or how they interact with technology today through the Change Agent. So deadline is May 2nd. So please, if you think that that's exciting, you want to have your learners submit something, you can check that out on the Change Agent website. Welcome to Camp GPT. I don't think I need to do that again. I don't think I need to do much here either. I'm Rachel Riggs. I work for the EdTech Center at World Education, and I lead our AI for Learning at Work initiative. I always like to start with a little bit of AI history. AI has a long, long history, all the way back to ancient times, the Greek gods, the 18th century. That's the two images you're seeing here. And it really started with a question being, can machines think like humans? And that question persists to today. So it started with a lot of mysticism and questions. And I always like to emphasize questions. So if you have questions about what AI is, know that it's still something that collectively computer scientists, philosophers are working through. So this image that you're seeing on the right, this is something called the Mechanical Turk, and I think it's a great metaphor for understanding AI. This was a machine that was put out on display in the 18th century, and it was a table and a man who was playing chess on the table. And so as people passed by this public display, they could play chess with this machine, supposed machine. And the Mechanical Turk would win, even won against very famous chess players of the time. Well, what happened is a while later, Edgar Allan Poe exposed the machine as actually being a fraud because there was a compartment where a human would sit inside of the Mechanical Turk and move chess pieces around. So this, oh, okay. Um, so this is very similar to what we see in AI today, where we see machines that can do things that are really impressive. And sometimes we forget that there are always humans behind those machines. So even today, when you go into different tools, digital tools and online tools, you might notice that when there is generative AI or an AI feature in those tools, there is a little symbol that indicates that to you. Does anybody notice what the symbol is just by looking at these little screenshots I have? Yes, thank you, Giovanna. The stars. So AI still today is very much represented as something that's magical and mystical. And so you'll often see it represented with little magical sparkly stars, or even a wand, like in the second example, a wand that looks like it's, casting a spell. So AI started with mysticism and questions. That same mysticism has continued to today, but the reality is that AI is all around us all the time. So if you use Netflix, there is something called a recommender system within Netflix that is an artificial intelligence algorithm that is designed to make personalized recommendations to you based on your preferences and your activity within Netflix. Similarly, and these are obviously, you can tell that my son is the one who uses our Netflix account. These are what Netflix recommends to him. Within a photo app, you might have seen that you can tag different faces and that the app can recognize when there are faces in a photo. That also is AI. In a music app, recently in Apple Music, there's like a little microphone with those sparkly magical stars around it. And what that does is it turns a song that you're playing into a karaoke song. So it extracts the singer's voice and gives you just the instrumentals. That is also AI that makes that possible. And finally, this is a tool called Socratic. It's a very cool educational tool that's in beta from Google. It's free. And what it does is if you scan an image of a question or a term in a textbook, it will give you recommendations for how to learn more or answer that question. So it could be a math equation and it'll give you videos and links. Here it was just a term and it gave me a suggestion. So that kind of image recognition is also AI. So AI is very broad. It's been around for a long time, like I said. But probably what brings us here today is talking about generative AI, which is a subset of techniques and applications within AI. And generative AI has really caused us to redefine how we formerly defined AI. So this is the former definition of AI. And you can see that the OECD brought several countries together to actually change this definition to be more accurate with the new capabilities that generative AI brings onto the scene. So not really necessary. I'm not going to read this definition. You guys can see it in the slides later, but just to kind of understand that when we talk about generative AI, we're actually talking about a very small subset of AI, but a subset that has brought new capabilities to the field, which of course causes us to rethink what we define as AI. We, as educators, it's really important that we pay attention to these new tools and to generative AI. There's an analysis that was done around occupations exposed to AI. Before generative AI, or a specific application of that called language modeling, the ChatGPT type of capabilities that you've probably heard of or seen, we were educators only were a couple on that top 20 occupations exposed to AI. After language modeling, the majority of the occupations exposed to AI are education teacher related. So it's really important. That exposure doesn't really mean that it could replace us. It just means that now what AI can do very much overlaps with our tasks as educators. So the call to action here is to figure out, okay, well, how can we use it to solve some of the problems that we have? How can we best leverage it? One example of how we've seen generative AI have a lot of application in our field of adult education is by helping us contextualize materials. So does anybody here, let me know in the chat, do you teach an IET, integrated education and training, or any kind of workforce preparation class? Actually, you guys should all look, we're a small group. Everybody put in the chat, what do you teach? What subjects do you teach? Okay, Tamika said yes. So Tamika teaches some kind of career occupational classes. Yeah, everybody put in the chat. What do you teach? ESL, math, science, ELA. Okay, Giovanna said ESL. So you saw on that, oh, culinary arts. Yeah, so another occupational, English adult ed. And we saw here the top, the number 2 and number 3 on occupational exposure are English language and foreign language educators. My background is also in ESL, so I always pay attention to that one. Oh, what's CCN, Diane? I don't know that acronym. Math and financial literacy math. Okay, great. English, CCN, career in college navigator, maybe? ESA, ESL, ELA. Okay, great.
Yes,
So,
that's it.
oh, it is? Oh, nice.
I was trying to put it in the box, but you said it before I had a chance. Yes, college and career navigating.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Okay, great. So yes, we see one great potential here is to quickly generate contextualized and relevant materials. So here's one example of what we can do in a matter of seconds using a tool called ChatGPT. On the left in the white, you're seeing a prompt, write 5-word problems in the context of working in blank that assess the skill blank and provide the answers. Okay, so if I enter that into ChatGPT and swap out for different occupations, let's say I start with construction, right? 5-word problems in the context of working in construction that assess this certain standard and provide the answers. This is an example of what it might give me. A construction worker needs to pour 8 cubic yards of concrete for a foundation. How many cubic feet of concrete will they need? So within seconds, we can see how we can get some problems and practice activities for learners that are highly contextualized to their workforce goals. And we can also think about how this helps us assess a variety of standards across, let's say we have a classroom full of diverse students, which we know is usually the case in adult education. They might be at different English levels, or they may have different occupational goals. So how can we take a math standard and teach it to that room of adult learners in a way that's highly relevant to their goals, or in a way that is tailored to their level? That's the kind of stuff that we have mostly seen generative AI is good at doing. Contextualizing practice problems, and then also giving us a range of different levels for instructional materials. So we know now kind of what AI is, what generative AI is, why it's important to us as educators, where it overlaps with our occupations. And that it has some potential, specifically within our field of adult education, to solve problems and help us out. So now what's CampGPT? I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an orientation to the CampGPT process. So we'll start today with just talking about our camp orientation. In other words, what we're going to be doing. And then also teaching with AI. So I'm going to introduce you to different tools. And I'm going to give you, by the end of today, an assignment for experimenting with the tools and filling out a worksheet and reflecting on that process. So that experimentation and reflection will happen between April 11th today and April 25th, our second session. I hope everyone, I'm glad that you're here today for a synchronous session. I think it'll be good. But I think you'll really, really get a lot out of just taking the time to experiment and reflect between our two sessions. So I hope you'll stick with us and do that assignment. It's really short and easy. And then join us again on April 25th, when we will do a show and tell. We'll have a chance for everybody to share what they worked on, what tool they used, what prompt they used, what prompting strategy, etc. And we'll also talk about teaching for AI. And I will define what that means in just a minute. So again, we talked about generative AI as a small subset of AI. Well, what can it do that is unique? Generative AI introduced into broader AI this ability to generate something that's completely new and original. So completely original text, images, audio, code, data sets, most relevant text. This is probably what most of you have heard of, is a tool called ChatGPT. Put in the chat for me a Y or an N. Have you heard of ChatGPT? Yes or no? Y or N? Okay. Anyone who, yes or no? Y or N? Have you heard of ChatGPT? So ChatGPT is called a chatbot, and ChatGPT can do a task that's called natural language processing. So ChatGPT is very good at generating language, text, and in any style you could imagine. You could ask it to generate something in the style of a specific author. You could ask it to generate a social media blurb or a 3-page essay. So it's just very, very good at generating a lot of text that sounds good, that sounds natural. That's that natural language processing. Thanks for letting me know. It looks like most of us have heard of it. And if you haven't, that's okay. You're going to have a chance to interact with the chatbot today. Not ChatGPT, but that's okay. And then there are apps like this one. This one's called Midjourney. So generative AI can also generate images, videos, and other kinds of media. So you could enter a prompt like a hot dog standing up and waving at a hamburger. And with just that short amount of text, I can get an image of whatever the AI interprets that to look like, but usually something that is colorful and does actually coherently look like a hot dog waving to a hamburger. So that's called text to image generation, and generative AI can also do that in addition to the text. And you can also generate images in ChatGPT. So that's not just text, but I just wanted to show you a couple of different examples. This third example, this is an app called Synthesia. This, yes, Tamika, you'll definitely get a copy of the slides. In fact, I'm going to share with you guys a Padlet in a little bit that will have all of the materials. Synthesia is a video generator. So here what I can do is I can enter in a script, and AI will match up that script with this avatar, and I'll get a video of the avatar saying what's happening in the script. So we know that this kind of software is used by large companies, like large manufacturers, if they need to put out some kind of training for their employees and want to do that quickly and efficiently. They just have to put the text from the training into Synthesia. They can change the clothes on the avatar. They can change the avatar. They can change the language of the text. They can change the background. And it's just a really quick and easy way to generate a realistic looking video. So that's what generative AI helps us do. It helps us generate text, images, video. So what is a teacher's role in light of all of that? The AI squad from the European Union put out a report. It's called Use Scenarios for AI in Education, something like that. If you Google this, you'll find it. But anyway, they outlined 3 steps for educators. So the first step that they advocate for is teaching for AI. That means teaching the skills, knowledge, and attitudes to navigate AI from a user perspective. In contrast to teaching about AI, which is training students about AI from a developer's perspective. And then third, teaching with AI, which has more to do with the teacher appropriately applying AI-based tools in the classroom. Some examples of what it might look like to teach for AI. You might integrate data privacy concepts into a social studies lesson on human rights. That's an example of an actual lesson plan, a free one that is on a website called Day of AI, which has lots of different curricular resources, primarily for elementary and high school, but could be adapted for adults. So that is an example of teaching for AI. You could also integrate algorithmic literacy, an AI skill, into a language lesson in which learners are describing the steps of a process. So teaching for AI is really developing within learners their ability to use tools that use AI. Teaching about AI is a little bit more technical. So here it would be like creating an AI application to learn about classification in data sets or training an AI model. And there are lots of free resources to teach about AI. And then there's teaching with AI. So that again is what we are focused on today in Camp GPT. How do we appropriately apply AI-based tools in the classroom? Like using a tool like Bard or ChatGPT or Gemini to create or update a syllabus, or incorporating the use of an intelligent tutoring system to personalize instruction, which we won't get into today, but is another application. So looking at the hierarchy that the European Union set out, they advocate for teaching for AI as being the primary thing. So preparing learners to use AI. That's like what they put at the top. Then they have teaching about AI. Again, a developer's perspective, preparing learners to develop or train AI. And then teaching with AI. That's about using AI effectively as a teacher. Do you guys agree with this hierarchy in this image? Would you change it thinking about adult learners? What do you think about this diagram that they have shared? Okay, agree. Okay. What we have heard and found in our work is a lot of adult educators first really feel like they want to be prepared with the teaching with AI component. We've also heard adult educators equate teaching for AI with other digital skills. So that overlap between the digital skills that someone needs just in general and how that prepares them from a user perspective to use AI tools. And then we've also heard them say that teaching about AI may not be as high of a priority because it's so technical and it really depends on what an adult learner's goals are for enrolling in adult education. So in other words, you may not always have an adult in your classroom who wants to learn how to develop or train AI systems. So we designed Camp GPT to start with teaching with AI and end with teaching for AI and give you guys resources so that if you want to teach about AI, you know where to go. So teaching with AI, we start with what we call our camp rules or packing up our gear to teach with AI. The GEAR acronym has some embedded AI ethics and awareness for educators. So we start with a mantra that we use at the EdTech Center, which is goals before tools. E stands for experiment and have fun. A stands for avoid bugs. And the R is remember to buddy up. And I'm going to unpack each of those for you. So starting with goals before tools, the G of GEAR. You may remember during the pandemic, your teaching practice may have looked something like this with an endless amount of new tools and things that you had to use because everything went online. Does this resonate with anybody who taught during that time? Just kind of swimming and yeah, okay, tons of different new tools. So goals before tools is really about preventing that from happening again and leading with our own goals for learning and teaching. So what you're seeing now is we have a lot of tools that incorporate generative AI. Those are the ones that are spinning on my screen. We even have some tools that are going away and being replaced with other new tools. So we have to not lead with our selection of tools, but rather with what our goals are for using those tools. So this diagram here shows what we think a strong EdTech integration strategy looks like. So we're using technology for education, EdTech. It always should start with building on a strong foundation of inclusive and effective practices. It should meet a need. So within those practices, we might see that there's an obstacle or an opportunity to improve our practices with technology. And then we can explore different solutions and continuously reflect and refine, evaluating different tools and engaging learners with those tools. So we always want to have a strong strategy and a clear goal for the use of technology in education. Of course, you all know that. That's why you came to ChatGPT, because you're like, I don't want to just start using these without knowing how and knowing how they fit into my instruction. So I want to know, what is your goal? We've heard a lot of different goals from educators around where they feel like there's an opportunity with generative AI. Some people have said that we feel like it's going to help me make high quality materials. Some people are excited about how it will help them contextualize. Some people like that there are so many free generative AI tools. What is your goal for using generative AI? What do you think it's going to help you do? What obstacle do you think it's going to help you overcome? Or what opportunity do you think there is to enhance your practice using generative AI? You can put your response in the chat. Saving time is Tamika's goal. Thanks, Tamika. And even within that, maybe the obstacle is not having enough time. The opportunity is, you know, if you can save time, how much more could you produce for students? What are the things that you just haven't had the time to get to? And thus now you might have some time if you can generate other things more quickly, right? Contextualize my ideas. Great. So we want to always start with our goal before we go to choose tools, because there's such a wide variety of tools out there. We want to know how they align with the goals that we have. Yeah, Norma says time. So that's great. Generative AI definitely can help with the time aspect. It helps me a lot to save time. So when we go to choose tools, we then can evaluate whether the tool is good for what we're trying to accomplish. So this is an example. If my goal is contextualization, right, to contextualize something, and I'm teaching ELA or writing, I can turn to ChatGPT and ask it to help me develop a lesson plan on writing a compare and contrast essay that integrates environmental conservation, particularly reduce, reuse, recycle. So in that way, I can have some kind of lesson plan that's highly contextualized to environmental conservation and science, right? So this is what ChatGPT produced when I asked for that lesson plan. So it gives me an objective, a grade level, duration, materials, and the lesson plan. Now, I may have a different goal, right? So if my goal is differentiation, and I'm actually thinking about learners using generative AI, and I'm thinking I want to support them to use generative AI in the writing process for those of them that need a little bit more scaffolding and help with the writing process. Well, if I know that the learners in my class are all set up on Gmail, then I can choose a tool that aligns with that goal. It wouldn't be ChatGPT. I would use something called Gemini, which is a Google tool, because I know my learners already have a Google account. Okay, so that's one way that just kind of our goals can guide our tool selection. If I'm wanting to differentiate and I want learners to be using generative AI to support the writing process at different levels, then I can factor in what they have access to and select a tool that aligns to my goals. So here I would use something called Gemini, which is almost exactly like ChatGPT. It just happens to be something that Google produces and that integrates well with Google products. So I can have learners enter this prompt. Help me develop an outline for a short compare and contrast essay on reducing versus recycling plastic waste. Now my learner has an outline that they can look at and edit, and they've gotten a little bit of assistance and scaffolding in the writing process. So goals before tools is our first rule, starting with a goal and not starting with just the idea of using a new tool. Next is exploring and having fun. This is related to the idea of digital resilience and being empowered users of new technologies and adapting to new technologies. Part of that adaptation comes just from confidence and experimentation and trying things out. So that's why we encourage everyone to explore and have fun, because if you don't really know what the tools can do to then align them to your goals. So I'm going to share with you guys in the chat. This is a chart of different generative AI tools that we have compiled. It's not exhaustive. It's just a selection, but we think it's a nice selection for people who are getting started and don't really know what all is out there. There's a lot out there, but we don't want to overwhelm. So I'm going to open up the resource. So if you click on the link and then click view this resource, you're going to see this. It's 2 pages. Mine's loading. And this could be a starting point for you if you're doing the assignment after today's session and you're looking for something to experiment with. So goodness gracious, if this would load, I could kind of talk about the different things you'll see on the list, but it's taking a long time. Okay, there we go. So the first 2 here, this first one I like. This is a chat bot as well, but you don't have to create an account or pay any money to use it. So if you would like to try out a chatbot and see what it can do, this one is a great one to start with. And I'll add, if you want to do that with learners and have them try something out, you might start here. And we're gonna play with that in a little bit today. This next one, Perplexity, this is a chatbot style search engine. So what a lot of people have said is that generative AI is going to change the way that we do search. And you may have already seen, like in Google Chrome, when you search something now, it gives you that generative AI summary. So Perplexity is a little more robust, but it's like a search engine in that same vein of giving you more capability in your search. And this one's highlighted green because you also can try it without creating an account. So for those of you that don't want to go through creating an account until you've been able to experiment with something, the first 2 will give you that opportunity. And soon ChatGPT will as well. I don't know if they've released that yet, but they're working on also opening that up for anyone to use. But then these four here are like kind of your run-of-the-mill generative AI products from big tech. So you've heard of ChatGPT probably. Google's version of that is Gemini, and there's a standalone chatbot like ChatGPT, but then you'll also see in Google Slides, in Google Docs, if you have a personal account, you might start to see those little sparkle features all over. That's Google's Gemini that you can use within those different Google apps. Claude is also like ChatGPT. In fact, a group of developers that works for OpenAI branched off and created Claude. And they market it as kind of a more secure version of ChatGPT. It's very impressive and very capable. And another option in addition to ChatGPT. And then there's Microsoft's Copilot, which similar to Gemini is kind of built into a lot of different Microsoft products. Then we get down to some of like the more ed tech stuff. A lot of teachers love this tool. It's called Magic School. It does come at a cost, but then it gives you a bunch of different things that you can create. So they've got like, I think over 60 different magic tools, a lesson plan generator, a quiz generator, and those kinds of things. So it's really specifically geared toward teachers. Khan Academy has a tool called Conmigo. This is a chatbot that is designed to assist teachers and or tutor students. So students who use Khan Academy can have access to Conmigo, or teachers can use it to generate teacher materials. Quizlet has something similar. It's called QChat. That's free. And it's a free kind of vocabulary practice tutor, drawing from all of the vocabulary sets on Quizlet. Canva has a bunch of generative AI features. They call it Magic Studio. So when you're in Canva, and if you haven't used Canva before, it's like a design tool to design different slides, worksheets, templates. And you'll see Magic Edit, Magic Expand. Anything that starts with magic is pretty much a generative AI feature. There's a tool called Diffit that is for differentiating learning materials at different levels. There's a tool called Pace AI, which is you can use any material within Pace AI, and it will level the material for English language learners and provide practice opportunities and a built-in chatbot tutor feature. Elicit is more of a research tool. And then these ones down here, these are just kind of fun stuff, fun miscellaneous tools. So I won't go through and explain all of those. But these are some of the things that you can experiment with between now and our next session. I wonder if anybody has a question or has used one of these and wants to share. Come on, campers. We're sitting around the fire, sharing stories. Who's here with me?
I used
Sorry.
go ahead.
What was that, Tamika? You
Oh,
there?
I thought someone else was talking. I used ChatGPT several times to do some letters, and they kind of got me. They created a letter, and I was able to pull information from it, and also to create a business plan. It really gave me a good start on a business plan, and I just started using Magic School, and that's about it for me on this list.
Nice. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else?
I have used ChatGPT before, just as an experiment to create a lesson plan for the middle school math lesson with applications in real life. And it gave me 4 pages of exercises and theory and everything needed. But I haven't had any practice with language practice application. Like for my students, I would love something that help them to practice and give them feedback, like not a regular language application, but something like this. Do you have any experience with any of that?
Yeah, it depends on what language skills you're referring to. So yeah, Vicky put Quizlet. So if you're specifically wanting them to develop vocabulary, that would be a good option. If you're thinking more around grammar, pronunciation, Pace AI might be something worth exploring. It's a new tool, but it is designed for adult English language learners. And I think it's an exciting, it'll kind of give them an intake. You as a teacher, first of all, will have a dashboard, which is nice. So you'll see what their interaction is, but then it'll assess them and then put them at a level which you could adjust as the teacher. And what it will then, like if they choose to read a news article, it'll generate practice activities at that level around the news article that they're reading. So that's another fun one, I think, to explore with English language learners.
That was awesome. Could you repeat the name, please?
Yeah, that one's Pace AI. Pace AI. It's right here in the list. And all of these titles here are hyperlinked. So if you guys see something and you want to check it out, you can click on it and it'll open up. Well, in theory, yeah, there we go. So then it would open link. Okay.
I also sent you a request because we have these little stars at the bottom of the screen here, like for AI companion and AI summary. So just to let
okay. Oh, well, you know what? I'm not the admin on this meeting, so I actually can't enable that, but whoever owns and is hosting the meeting.
So I did actually, when that request came in, I hit enable.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you guys for sharing. Let's get back to here. So exploring and having fun starts with checking out some of those different tools and then experimenting with them. And so what I encourage is for teachers to look at, here's my goal. This is what I'm working on. For Giovanna, it's language learning and language practice. And then try a few different tools and see how they compare. So this is an example where I asked a few different chat bots to develop a fill in the blank question for the word correspond that will elicit a different word in that word family, like correspondence. And so I tried that out with ChatGPT and then with Claude and then with Bard, just as a way to kind of see, okay, this is, you kind of get a sense for what the different tools are good at and the different features that you have within those tools. Sorry, Bard is the old name of Gemini. So if you see Bard, just know that it's not called Bard anymore. It's called Gemini. I should have changed it on this slide. Everything's evolving very quickly. It's hard to keep up. So experiment, look at different tools, and then think about, okay, what's my goal? And try out a few different tools to achieve that goal. The next is avoid bugs. So in our GEAR acronym, goals before tools, explore and have fun, and then avoid bugs. What are the bugs that are specific to generative AI? The first bug is data privacy. When we talk about bugs, we're really talking about what are the pitfalls, what are the drawbacks. So data privacy, so we know, well, first of all, that a lot of the tools are free right now, kind of like during the pandemic when a lot of companies were sharing their tools for free. And then as we transitioned out of that time, I'm thinking of a tool called Wakelet in particular, was free. Now it's at a cost. It's a freemium. So you can only do like 3 wakelets and you have to pay for anything else. So that happens a lot when something is new and exciting, and everybody wants new users on their platform. They'll offer it for free for a period of time. That's especially relevant with generative AI, because what these tools really need to improve is data. So they actually need us to be interacting with them so that they can get better. That's why you'll see a ton of them on that list, right? We're free, but it's not always going to be that way. And I always encourage people to also think about their own personal data as currency as well. So in a way, you are paying for the tool just by sharing your interactions and patterns of behavior with the tool. So just think about what you want to share on these platforms. Who are you sharing it with, or to what extent do you know who you're sharing it with, and how it might be used? What settings do you have to control your data? And what do you know about what the tool does with your data? So in ChatGPT, for example, you do have the ability to turn off a feature that where they would be using your data to train their AI models. So, you know, that's an example of you having a little bit more control over your data. Another bug you may have heard of, or pitfall with generative AI, a lot of people like to call hallucinations, but it's really just inaccuracy. And so I always encourage teachers to think about what these tools are designed for. They're really designed to generate things that sound correct or look real. And they are not necessarily designed to give you something that's factually accurate. So I also think this opens up a great opportunity with learners to talk about information literacy and how do you know that something's true, fact checking, citing sources, and all of that. So think about what information the tool has access to. Within some of them, you can, they're accessing the live internet, like Bing Chat in Microsoft Bing, the web browser, has constant access to the most up-to-date information on the internet. Whereas others, like I think the free version of ChatGPT, they only have access to a certain cutoff point, which might have been like last year or something. It is changing all the time, so I don't know exactly. But just thinking about that, what information does the tool have access to? And can you really rely on it to give you the most up-to-date and accurate information? And if not, how are you going to verify the output and make sure that whatever you're developing with it has your own influence and is something that you can own and explain yourself. Another bug you might have heard about is that generative AI perpetuates bias and stereotypes that exist in society, and in particular Western worldview. So this is an example of a prompt for an Indian person, and what you'll notice is that there is, I think, maybe 1 or 0 women who show up in this image, and then there are some who show up with a Native American headdress. So just thinking about the, you know, what bias you might be perpetuating, or what stereotype you could be perpetuating by using the tools, and again, how will you check and how will you mitigate that risk? Yeah. And just always remembering that, you know, you as a human can verify these things, that no technology is perfect. This is an example of, I was looking for an image of an adult learner, and the adult learner that it produced wasn't for me like what I was used to seeing in my classroom. This looks like an adult learner that maybe in, well, I mean, it does look like an adult learner, but it wasn't really what the picture I had in my head, right? So once you intervene with your more adjectives in your prompt and really hone the output, that is your control over the final product. So that's how it changes when you really put yourself in the driver's seat. When you have a really effective prompt, And then when you verify the output and make sure that it aligns with what you were looking for, I wanted this adult learner that I had in my head to be using technology, because obviously I work for the Ed Tech Center and I wanted them to be interacting with technology in some way. So that was something I had to prompt for, because the first very vague prompt that I gave, they're using a pencil. So just remembering to verify and to use prompting strategies to get what you want out of the tools, because the tools are not perfect. And then remembering to buddy up. This is all about collaboration and human-centered strategies for using generative AI. And we are going to talk about some of these strategies, basically a detailed dialogue. Like I said, a few adjectives gives you as the human a little more control over the output. Human verification, looking at the output and making sure it's what you want. And then sharing transparently about when you use generative AI. So what we are going to do as a group is this worksheet between now and our next session. And you're actually going to share that worksheet with colleagues on a Padlet. We think that's all part of this collaboration as humans working together and putting things out in the open. What we've done is we've taken some of the prompts and examples from past Camp GPT cohorts, and we've published those in what we call the open prompt book. And I'm going to put the link to that in the chat so that other educators can see what are the prompts that adult educators are using, what are they using generative AI for, and give you some really relevant examples of how the tools are being used by other adult educators. So I want you guys to open up the open prompt book, and I'll open it up on my screen too, and share with me, what do you notice? What are you seeing in the prompt book that's interesting to you? So let's open it up. And when you get to the pages that are gray, like in the background, you will see the different prompts. So there's a lot of front matter, some tips, some acknowledgements, etc. What did I just do? Can you guys see my screen still? Oh no, I'm not sharing my screen. Okay. So open up the book, scroll to one of these gray pages, and take a look at what other adult educators are using. These were all chat bot examples, so all generating text. What are other adult educators using tools like ChatGPT and Gemini for? I'll go down and show some examples. Loading. It's taking a long time. So the first section is called educational resources. So more for the classroom. This first one is differentiation for projects, and you'll see with each one, there's a brief summary. Some of them have a quote from the teacher or the camper, and then they all over here have the prompt. So this was this camper's prompt. Can you write 3 to 5 project prompts that use different modalities for adult English learners to demonstrate their dream house? Learners are high intermediate adult students. Projects should take 2 to 3 hours to complete. Each project choice should have the same complexity level. And then this camper said, I also asked Bard to help me generate a single point rubric to assess content and delivery. It did an okay job. The rubric will need some tweaking, but it was certainly faster than coming up with on my own. Okay, so that's one example of how a former camper used Bard, or now Gemini. This is another example, teaching language with rhythm. An example, incorporating music into language learning. And what you'll notice is that some of the examples, some of them have a quote that we thought was really insightful. Some of them have these links so that you can actually see the response to the prompt. This one is write a rhythm and blues song about shopping at the grocery store that teaches these parts of speech. And then if we click on one of the links, okay, it's still loading, we can open it up and see what the response was to their prompt. So this resource is really just meant to help people brainstorm and collaborate around their use of generative AI tools. What we don't want are a bunch of teachers using the tools and not being able to create some kind of community practice around it. Because it's so new, we want to be able to share what we learn and how we find it to be useful. So that is what the Open Prompt Book is all about. So I wonder, what do you notice or what do you wonder about the Open Prompt Book before we move into our next section here? Any thoughts? Notice, does anything stand out to you? Wonder, do you have any questions about it? I wonder why it's taking so long to load on my computer. Thoughts, questions? Not really? Okay. Let's get to some prompting strategies, what many of you came for. I'm going to close out this portion on remembering to buddy up with, again, emphasizing that human component of verifying an output. So these are two different tools: screening for biased content and instructional materials, tool for identifying bias in sources. I love these. I don't think you're probably going to be using these every time you use ChatGPT or something, but they are so great for giving you some things to think about when it comes to how bias might be showing up in your instructional materials. Okay, good, Norma. Good, Norma. Hopefully, I know it's a lot, but hopefully it is helpful. Okay, so here's a link to the screener here, and then the tool for identifying bias. So just something to think about if you're not already in that practice, or you don't know what different identity markers to look for to make sure that some of your materials are representative and diverse, then these tools could give you some fodder around that. So what I want to do now is, those were all of our camp rules. And we really want to emphasize that this is new technology, but really the same principles that we have been advocating for at the Ed Tech Center for years apply to this new technology. Goals before tools, exploring and having fun with technology, making sure you avoid the pitfalls, and then collaborating and including that human element. Those are things that we've always been advocating for. And we know that they're also things that teachers have been practicing for a long time too. It's just a new way to think about them with generative AI. So before we get to prompting strategies, I want to hear from you guys on how you have applied these camp rules or these practices in your use of educational technology in the past. So what I've just shared with you is our camp Padlet. So this is our core resource. It will be in Brightspace. So you guys will be able to access it there. And it has our slides from today in the first column. Down here in the back, it has our homework and a place for us to submit the homework. But I want us to focus on these 4 columns here of the camp rules. And I want you guys to share your experience applying these rules in the past. So goals before tools. When is a time that you've chosen a specific tool because you felt it really aligned with your particular instructional strategy or key learner factors? So think about a time, maybe I was looking at Microsoft Word versus Google Docs, and I chose Google Docs because why? Okay. Share a time here in the second column that you have just freely explored and experimented with new tech tools. I know during the pandemic, we would host these kind of sandbox sessions, and we would all just explore the different Zoom features because we were using Zoom for instruction for the first time. That's one example that I can think about. So what are some times you've done that? When have you had to navigate technological pitfalls? How did you avoid the bugs or develop workarounds? Do you recall a time when you relied on a mentor or a community of practice? What guidance did that buddy provide? So just want you guys to add in your responses. You can click on the plus sign above the question that you want to respond to and share a brief little blurb about your experience. So I'll demonstrate that under explore and have fun. I'll give it a name, Zoom exploration sessions, and describe during the pandemic, we would Zoom to features like breakout rooms. And then when I click publish, that will appear here. Okay, I see people are joining the Padlet. That's a good sign. And I'm gonna wait. See, let you guys have some time to respond. And if you happen to be on your mobile phone or in some kind of way that makes it hard to interact on the Padlet, please just feel free to unmute. Is anybody having trouble with Padlet? It should just let you write in. Okay, I see someone was able to successfully respond. It should let you write into it. Okay, someone put, during the pandemic, we were discovering new tools and immediately sharing them if we found them useful. Great, so that's that buddying up, relying on each other and collaborating. Okay, I see more people joining the Padlet. Hopefully it's working for you. If not, just put your comment in the chat. We can see that too. Okay, great. During the pandemic, I learned about Nearpod. It was a great discovery and tool for me. So, okay, so let's get into some survival skills with generative AI. So now that we've kind of set ourselves up within Camp GPT, we're going to start with goals. We're going to evaluate the tools critically. We're going to be aware of the different bugs and pitfalls. We're going to be openly collaborating with other educators and experimenting and having fun. Now I want to get into some of the skills that are going to help you get the most out of using these different tools. The first, this is really more just your mindset and your frame of reference, is to think about how this is different from just something like a Google search. So we know that there are certain skills connected to an effective Google search. Less and less have they become really essential, but there was a time where you really had to be very smart about the keywords that you were entering. It's better now at picking up on just natural language. That's AI at work. It makes it better at that. But thinking, we used to really need to know what are the keywords. And to an extent, we still do. It definitely helps to have a really effective search strategy and know how to do that well. We had to really evaluate some of the different things that would pop up. We now have to be more aware of which of the results we get are sponsored results or ads versus just regular results. So there are different digital skills connected to using Google and doing an effective search. Similarly, there are skills related to using generative AI chatbots, and not just chatbots, image generators and other things. And those skills, you've probably heard something called prompt engineering, but I really like to just think of them as writing effective prompts. So if you're teaching writing, think about that. You could also teach about writing prompts. So this is a screenshot of ChatGPT. I don't like to do a live demo because sometimes that can, cause all kinds of connectivity issues. But if you guys need support, just let me know and reach out to me between sessions. I'm happy to help you. But just looking at this, I want to point out a few different features that are related to those skills that we need to have. So first, you'll notice that I have my prompt here and it's pretty lengthy and detailed. Okay, what I've used here is called a prompt framework, and I'm going to share a prompt framework with you in a minute. You'll also notice within many of these tools, you have the ability to edit your prompt even after you've sent it off. That's a way to kind of iterate. So if I've entered a prompt and I get a result and I see, oh, you know what? In my prompt, I asked for a 10-week class. It's really a 12-week class. I can go here and edit the prompt and just delete 0 and add 2, and it will regenerate the result. So if I want to make small tweaks, but I don't want to, rewrite everything, that is one way that I can do it. I can just edit that prompt. Another thing I can do, which is really helpful, is return to a prior thread. So if I, for example, have worked in ChatGPT to develop materials for a certain class, I've already given it all kinds of context for this class. So you see here, I say, the learners taking this class come from diverse backgrounds and are highly motivated to learn math in order to pass their GED and enter into the field of manufacturing. All classes will be delivered synchronously and in person. The objectives need to be aligned to the CCRS and manufacturing skills identified in ONET. Okay, so I've given it a lot of that context. Now, when I leave ChatGPT, and I go teach this lesson, and then I realize, you know what, I need a quiz to follow up on this lesson, or I want to generate the next lesson plan for this class. If I go back to the prior thread where I've already established the context, it's going to be a lot easier and I'll get better results by returning to that prior thread rather than starting from scratch. So that's another strategy that's important to remember, is that you can return to the conversations where you've already set out a lot of details. And then giving feedback or copying the results. So once you get the output, that's what this is here with the ChatGPT logo, you'll have all kinds of different options. It'll depend on the tool. So in a minute, I'm going to show a screenshot of Gemini. So the tools on the Gemini output are different from ChatGPT. That's another reason you want to kind of use some different ones and compare and contrast what you're able to control. Here, I can give it a thumbs up, thumbs down. I have a little clipboard. So what I can do is I can copy this output to my clipboard, go to Google Docs and paste it there. If I really like it and want to use it and edit it more. So those are just a few of the different things and options I have within ChatGPT. And there are more, I'm just covering the basics here. So then in Gemini, this is a screenshot of Gemini. I used the same prompt and this is the result that I got back. What do you guys notice on this screen versus the last one? So this is the output that you're seeing. You're not seeing my prompt. But do you notice anything unique to Gemini that ChatGPT didn't have? What you think?
Is it Google?
Yeah, they have the Google it because it's a
Mhm.
Google product. So great, Tamika. That's one thing is here in the output in ChatGPT, I cannot Google it, but in Gemini, I can Google it and it will take me to some different Google results for that are related to my prompt. Thanks. Anything else anybody notices? Point out another one here, export to sheets. Again, if you're a Google user and you use Google spreadsheets, it'll give you the result and then you can easily just transfer that over to Sheets. So with ChatGPT, I was going to copy and paste. With Gemini, I can export to another Google product. So yeah, I'll point out some of these. Yeah, you can share it. Good one, Vicki. Yep, so I can, down here, I still have the thumbs up and the thumbs down, and I always tell teachers, use those. It's really good to give feedback, right? That's how these tools will improve and be better for us. So give it thumbs up or thumbs down if you like or don't like the output. You'll also see here with Google, I can tweak the output, so it'll actually give me some different controls. I could change like the tone of what it's provided for me. I can share and it'll give me some different ways to share the output and then I can Google it like Tamika mentioned. And then the other thing that we really have to know is very different from searching is that this is a dialogue. It's really a conversation. So in ChatGPT, I showed you can edit the prompt and have it regenerate something. Another way I could have done that is I could have just typed here, oops, I meant to say 12 weeks. Can you adjust this and make it 12 weeks instead of 10 weeks? And then it would give me the 12-week lesson plan. What 12-week lesson plan? Okay, whatever. You know what I mean. It would give me the 12-week scope and sequence. And so that's another thing that's really important to remember. Just keep talking to it to get what you're wanting out of it. You see the plus sign, I can add files to my prompt. So I could say, this is my scope and sequence for my construction course, adapted for manufacturing, something like that. I can talk to it with the little audio button. So you'll get different features and different capabilities in different tools. So some important skills to have are writing effective prompts and then knowing how to have that dialogue. And I'll say none of this is a hard science. These are ideas that people have found to work. And so we should keep sharing ideas if you find something to be really effective. But one thing that people have found works really well is to use a prompt framework. And we have shared with teachers this one called RACEF. This is from an intro to ChatGPT. This is a free course, Prompt Engineering 101. So if you want, you could take that course. It's good. But that's where we got this prompt framework from. So we give it a role We say you are an information technology trainer giving advice to adults who are learning basic digital skills. So that's you are, that's the role. Then we give it an action. What do we want it to do? Break down one learner's goal to be able to navigate Google Classroom with their child into individual steps. That's the action. Then we give it context. The context is really important and really helpful, as much as you can really think of, right? That's relevant to what you're asking it to do. So I tell it, this learner is creating a digital literacy action plan in an ESL class. She knows how to use the phone, but struggles with the mouse and computer and keyboard on a laptop computer. So I'm giving all of this context and detail. Then if it's feasible, you could give an example. So like I just said, you could give it an attachment of another scope and sequence that you've developed as the example, or you can give it a shorter example like this. An example step could be create a Google account, but there need to be more basic steps as well that help her feel comfortable with laptop. And then you can ask for a specific format. So how do you want the final result to be formatted? Here I say, write the steps in a number list, each one with a brief description and time estimate. The format, I mean, these are optional. We saw teachers use some of these components and not others. The format, for example, it probably, if I asked it for steps, it would automatically put them in a number or a bulleted list. So format is really just, if you want something really specific, ask for it. But the more detail you can provide, the closer you'll get to what you're looking for. So then you can go back, you can edit the prompt like I talked about and resubmit if you notice a gap. You can return to a prior thread to avoid having to rewrite that entire prompt again. If you have done that nice detailed prompt and you're teaching the same class or you're working with the same learner or you're working on something that's really similar, go back to that thread, name it so that you can know how to get back to it, and then continue the conversation with more requests. And then detailed dialogue. This is also called prompt chaining. So you start the conversation with a description of your goal. I'm an adult basic education teacher. I'm looking for a chatbot to help me generate a rubric for an upcoming assessment. The assessment will be a 3 to 5 paragraph essay on the topic of climate change. And a great strategy that people have found is to tell the chatbot to ask you questions. So maybe you're going in and you're thinking, well, I don't know what details to give it. This is my first time. So what you can do is say, this is the task I want, or this is what I'm working on. What questions do you have? And it will actually prompt you to then provide details that will be helpful. So tell it to ask you questions. What questions do you have about the assignment? And then keep iterating and refining as you go. So you can ask it after it's given you the first draft to write the descriptions of the criteria in simpler language. And that's part of the prompt chaining, the back and forth and the refining of the final output. And then at the end, you can finish with a first draft or a near to final product. So I tell teachers, you might end up with something that you want to put in Google Docs and continue to edit. There are a whole range of different perceptions and opinions of how close to the final product you can really get in the chatbot environment. And that's really up to you and your preference. So I could keep going back and forth with it to iterate and really get exactly what I want. Or I might find it faster to have it give me the full outline first draft. I move that to a doc and I, flesh it out a little bit more. So again, thinking about, you might end up with the final product, you might end up with a near to final product, or you might end up with a first draft. Wondering from you guys, are there additional prompting strategies that you've seen, that you've used, or that you've seen used, or that you've heard of? So I'll give some examples. I've heard people say that, like, if you offer to tip it $10, it actually performs better for you. And there are all kinds of examples like that out on the internet. I wonder if you guys have anything that you've heard of. Okay, share them in the chat if you do. I wanted to give us an opportunity to get into a chat bot. So we've got 5 minutes. We won't spend too much time here, but this is really, we're wrapping up. I want you guys to get into this chat bot and enter a prompt. So when you go to huggingface.co/chat, which I'm going to get into the chat. I'm going to get into the chat at some point. Okay, there it is. Well, that's not clickable. Let me try this. And then if you click I'm a guest, you'll be able to use it without signing in. So try as guest here. There's the clickable link. Try as guest. And then I want you guys to just enter a prompt. Ask anything. You can see here, this is another one, right? So this one you can turn on search the web. This one is also very much for experimentation. So you can choose different open source models. It's a little more technical than probably you want to get into, but you can if you are interested in that. So let's try something. Let's try translate classes canceled into the top 3 languages spoken in South Carolina. English, Spanish, and French. So now I have that in the 3 different languages in just seconds. What are you guys trying? Is anybody opening it up and trying something out?
Yes, I open.
Cool. So then I can do the prompt framework, right? I could do you are, and you don't have to put the labels either. So let's just do this. You are an adult basic education instructor. Teach ESL. Action. Create a grammar practice. Fill in the blank. Practice present simple. Context of healthcare tasks. That's role, action, context. This is for a beginner class. Okay, and then I could keep going. Example, format, but let's just see what we've got so far. I go to the doctor every year for a checkup. My dentist is very friendly and gentle. You need to make an appointment to see a specialist. Okay. Now, maybe I know there are certain verbs that we've just learned. So I could go back and say, we've just studied the verbs, you know, blah, 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 blah. And then it'll give me a new response with those verbs. Okay, so I encourage you guys, and your task, your assignment, your homework is to experiment and try this out. So we have the Padlet. I've already shared the link, so I'm not going to reshare my slides here, but what you'll find over here under homework is a worksheet. And within the worksheet, it's going to ask you to write your name, what was your goal, what prompt did you use, what tool did you use. So fill that information out. And then once you have filled that out and you're ready, you can post it here under submissions. If you have any trouble, you can email me at any time and I am here to help you guys. But I also want to, on April 25th, have a show and tell. So would love to have some volunteers who want to share what tool they experimented with and what they got out of it, what reflections they have, what problems they ran into. So if you're willing to do that, please do reach out to me. My email address is at the bottom of this worksheet, and I'm also going to share it with you in a second. I wanted to share 2 events that are coming up that I would love to invite you guys to on Friday, tomorrow. Well, monthly, we do these EdTech strategy sessions. And we have 2 more left before summer break. So tomorrow we'll be sharing, hey, Dr. Mary Gaston, you guys know her? Our South Carolina friend, Dr. Mary Gaston, is going to be talking about a digital skills framework. Then we have someone speaking about universal design for learning. Then on May 10th, since you're all so interested in experts in AI now, we have 2 AI related lightning talks, a history of AI for educators, and then how to evaluate AI enabled tools. So I hope you'll join us for those. And I thank you all very, very much for joining me today. I hope you found this to be helpful. And like I said, reach out anytime if you have questions or need help before the 25th. And you better come on the 25th or I will be very hurt. No, I'm just kidding. Thanks, guys. Thanks for being active participants today.
Thank you very much for your help.
Thank you so much, Rachel. That was awesome. Can't wait to see everybody on the 25th.
I just put my email in the chat.